Georgia's second post-Soviet president, Eduard Shevardnadze, who was a former Soviet foreign minister and major influence on Gorbachev's perestroika reforms, inherited a country on the brink of complete collapse. Georgia had 15,000% inflation, high crime, unreliable electricity, and was reeling from a civil war which left central Tbilisi in ruin, and had three regions, Abkhazia, South Ossetia, and Ajara, on the brink of secession. The first years of Shevardnadze's tenure as president were marked by the Abkhaz War, near independence of Ajara, and 3 consecutive years where Georgia's economy shrank by more than 20%. To help combat this, Shevardnadze introduced a new currency, the kuponi, in 1993, with a conversion rate of $1 to 5,060 kuponi. Within a few months, the exchange rate was $1 to 2,400,000 kuponi. Unemployment was at a record high, and the government shed over 250,000 jobs to make up for its massive deficit. Shevardnadze's legacy is twofold. The first is an ethnically fragmented state with 2 breakaway regions, Abkhazia and South Ossetia. The second part is far more important to our understanding of the building of the modern Georgian state and democratization in its infant stages. Shevardnadze was able to build a semblance of a Georgian state in the latter half of his time in office. One of the single largest hurdles to Georgian state building in Shevardnadze's time was the limited level of economic and infrastructural development, along with the minute amount of interaction that much of the Georgian people, particularly those in the countryside, had with the outside world. The Soviet Union prevented people from experiencing the rapid technological and social changes that occurred elsewhere in the world, and, by 1991, Shevardnadze knew that to be successful in rebuilding the Georgian state, he would need to bridge the cultural and social gap between Georgians and the existential needs of the state. Shevardnadze relied on incorporating younger, Western-educated intellectuals into his government to help implement new reforms in the parliament, which was to no longer be elected through popular elections, thereby circumventing the nationalist zeal that allowed Gamsachurdia to come to power before him. By the late 1990s and the turn of the millennia, Georgia's economy had stabilized, but was still growing at less than 3% annually. All this meant was that discontent with Shevardnadze and his political party was high. To help, laws on entrepreneurship, investment, privatization, tax collection, land ownership, the military, and elections were passed, thereby giving members of parliament experience in governing. Perhaps Shevardnadze's most important political reform was the establishment of a new constitution in 1995, which was based loosely on the American model, granting the president significant powers. Georgian society reached its boiling point during the parliamentary elections in November 2003. These elections were marred with mismanagement from all sides. Georgia's voter registry was outdated, so Shevardnadze ordered the Central Election Commission to create a new registry. But the new registry was equally unreliable. On the day of the election, many polling stations opened late. By 11 in the morning, the Central Election Commission announced that polls would stay open 2 hours later than scheduled and would allow voters whose names were not on the registry to vote. Georgian media only inflamed the situation. The Georgian media's justified focus on electoral violations and general mismanagement created an environment for the Georgian people to lose faith in their government's ability to conduct a free, fair, and legitimate election. What's more, the media relied heavily on its own self-conducted polls to relay information to voters, with one television station announcing its own exit polls while polls were still open and allowed Saakashvili to declare himself the victor of the elections. The worst part of this is that the exit polls that had been aired were inaccurate, with vastly different results from station to station. The electoral situation in Ajara, which was ruled as a personal fiefdom of its leader, Aslan Areshidze, proved to be the tipping point in support for the fall of Shevardnadze. Areshidze claimed that his own party received 95% of the vote. Shevardnadze, fearing that Ajara would break away like Abkhazia, chose not to confront Areshidze and instead placated him. As a result, the Central Election Commission used Abashidze's results and announced that revival had come first place in the country. Additionally, Abashidze changed his title to the President of Ajara and created an armed militia in the region. The Georgians were astonished that their president treated Abashidze more like a boss than a widely loathed despot. On November 17, 2003, Abashidze sent thousands of his supporters to Tbilisi to call for stability. Simultaneously, supporters of opposition leaders Nino Burjanadze and Mikhail Saakashvili were in the streets protesting the election results as well. In order to appease the protesters, Shevardnadze convened a special parliamentary session to occur on November 22nd. With just minutes to spare before a quorum was due to hold the session, Shevardnadze agreed with an opposition party that the election results would be nullified and a new one would be held within months. Shevardnadze was addressing the rowdy audience that had assembled in the Georgian parliament, giving a speech that was largely babble given the political situation unfolding in the streets. Crowds gathered in nearby Tavisuplevis Moedani, or Liberty Square, on Rustaveli Avenue, and surrounded and took the Chancellery building, located 1 block away from the parliament. Opposition leaders Nino Burjanadze and Mikhail Saakashvili, along with their followers, stormed into the parliament building, complete with television crews accompanying them. As they entered, their protesters held roses. That evening, Shevardnadze, speaking from his private residence in the Tbilisi neighborhood of Krtsanisi, declared a state of emergency and stated that he would use force if necessary to deal with protesters. Upon hearing this, Russian President Vladimir Putin sent Russia's foreign minister, Igor Ivanov, to help mediate a resolution between Saakashvili and Shevardnadze. Saakashvili and his supporters agreed that Shevardnadze was to hand in a letter of resignation post-dated for the summer of 2004. However, during the night of November 22nd, just hours after his parliamentary session was stormed, Shevardnadze announced his immediate resignation. Ultimately, Shevardnadze's rule can only be described as one word: survival. Despite the ethnically fragmented Georgian state and debilitatingly high poverty rates, Shevardnadze managed to pull Georgia out of the abyss and into a relatively politically stable state, in which the rule of law became somewhat normalized. The government strengthened, and civil society less radicalized. However, Shevardnadze's attempt to maintain order during his tumultuous tenure as Georgia's second post-Soviet president led to his ultimate demise. For more information about Georgia, visit our website www.visiting-georgia.com. Thanks for watching.